of it, maybe even 50%, is something that we highly support, whether it's transportation, other aspects of the education statutes that are being improved. The unfortunate part is the other section of this bill is what gives some of us cause for concern and why we may be a no vote today. I believe that Senator Linares pointed out very articulately, as did some other senators, about the situation we find us in. This has been a particularly bad week, as you've heard, for the countries of Greece and even the territory of the United States, Puerto Rico. Things are pretty bad. When you have a run on the bank and a state takeover of the banking system, when you have creditors as in Puerto Rico, breathing down your neck, then there is serious cause for concern. It's also an alarm bell for the state of Connecticut as well. When you have marquee businesses such as IBM and GE and the Travelers, the Aetna, Boehringer Ingelheim, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Black & Decker, and others proclaiming that they are concerned about our budget and the state of affairs and the policies that could affect them directly, we should be very concerned. Connecticut is in a fiscal crisis, and just delaying some of the components of this particular bill is, for some of us, the singular reason that we are no vote. Just delaying the taxes that they're proclaiming would force them to move their jobs out of states, such as the unitary tax. It doesn't go away. It's just delayed for a year. That doesn't give them any solace. That doesn't give them any confidence. That won't persuade them that they should stay here. And additionally, that particular aspect of this budget and the other one where we raise the tax brackets on the wealthier individuals and the small business owner from where it is today to nearly 7%, this is a big cause for concern, because that's just not the wealthy it targets. It's also the small business person who actually files their business taxes through their own personal income tax. That's going to depress their ability to invest in their businesses. This is still a $1.9 billion increase in taxes on the state of Connecticut. It's the wrong direction. And just last week, we heard from a governor from another state, we all know who they are, that was pitching his state to many of our area's small businesses. What I heard him say is something that we need to listen to, because it's very important that we really find out what the competition is doing to poach some of our own Connecticut businesses and the taxpayers of the state. What I heard are some things that we should be putting in practice as well here. These are some of the few things that this governor was saying that make his state an attraction to our residents and our jobs. He makes very few priorities, and one of them is jobs. That is singularly his number one priority. And he sets a goal of making his state the best place, not just in America, but in the world to do business. He cites even Palm Beach as a wonderful place for our investment firms, our hedge funds to be located, and he's attracting a lot of them there. The state benchmarks itself against other successful states, including Republican states, not just Democratic states. And he believes that he's the top salesperson for the state and brings his own department heads with him whenever he's calling on companies here in Connecticut or in other places. And he's very happy, he says, to poach those businesses from states like Texas, which he touts that their business sector is even more successful and they're attracting more jobs. He talks about the fact that businesses should talk to their employees on how any new taxes a state might put in affects their job, and that he needs to balance his budget and spend less. And if someone comes to him from a department and wants to spend more in that department, he asks them to find other places to cut, and that he's not afraid to use the veto pen. So for him, controlling costs is so important to keeping his state competitive, and that he measures the heck out of everything the state does and does a return on investment analysis on what is being spent. And of course, we hear this all the time, pension reform. That's huge. Rhode Island has done it. Connecticut needs to do it. He believes in funding education, as we all do as well, and has actually made what was once considered a not very top-notch school system number 2 in the world in the 4th grade reading area. And we all know how important it is for students to read by the 3rd grade. They're actually closing their achievement gap instead of widening it. He believes in funding transportation and water ports, as we do, and funding programs for the disabled. One of the things he says again and again is that he needs to sell his plan first to the public and then his own legislature. Tell people what you plan to do, and then tell them when you do it. And hold yourself personally accountable. You show up when something goes wrong. I think we all probably practice those very principles ourselves in our own districts. But this parting shot is that when a state like Connecticut raises taxes or increases regulations, which a lot of this budget does, it makes his job so much easier to compete. Of course, they are fortunate. They don't have an income tax. We didn't. We enacted that temporary tax that is still with us today. They don't have an inheritance, gift, car, or pension tax. And he remarked, and this is true right now, that too many people in Connecticut just give up and leave instead of standing up and fighting. But I personally think that is not the case anymore. If any of you have had any meetings in your district recently, a town hall meeting, I'm sure you had the same reaction as I did. You used to be very happy to get a dozen people in the room. Right now, 50, 60 people, they're bursting at the seams. They're standing in the hallway, really upset about what is happening. And that includes people from every side of the political aisle, or independents and unaffiliated. They're angry. They're finally paying attention. Not because our side of the aisle is all that expert in communications. We really are not any better than any other party. It is because now our financial plight is on a national scale. When you have Joe Scarborough and CNBC and CNBC and so forth talking about this, when you have the Wall Street Journal saying we're worse off than Illinois, you have Forbes coming out with an article all the time, you have the Hartford Courant and most of our major newspapers talking about this, people finally are paying attention. And I think that's going to translate, because when you have the people more engaged in the process, you're going to get a better outcome. It's going to make both sides have to compromise and take a good, hard look at themselves. And you really can't argue with the success that Florida and other states are having. We have to, in Connecticut, copy the good models that are out there, some of the same basic principles, good practices that they're putting into place, instead of constantly criticizing the opponents, the people on the other side, the competitors. If we do that, we just might convince businesses to stay. As Senator Linares said, Puerto Rico is having budget problems because they borrowed heavily to balance their budget and have run deficits. They have high taxes. Their population is leaving. They have high energy costs, all of the same components we have. You know, we say to those people with one foot out the door, you just might be convinced that Connecticut does mean it when they want to change and say we're open for business. But we have to back that up with action, not just words. And our no vote, those of us that vote no, is actually a method to sound the warning bells that we do have to make a change. Thank you, Madam President.